So I got this unwrapped, and everything looks good. I'm happy with it. It's got 3 good fat coats of we're going to call it just high build primer. I was going to show you guys real quick the difference between high build primer and epoxy if there's any confusion to it. Like I always said before, the epoxy reminds me of like of a rubber coating. So that's what you put over your bare metal to protect the metal from rusting. And then you can also use this as a sealer. So you put your epoxy down, then you do your mud work, then you high build prime it, and then block it all down and whatever, and then you can finally seal it. Or you can even seal over your mud work with the epoxy if you want to kind of sandwich it and seal it in. And then right before it's done, if you want to reseal it, seal it again, you can actually reduce this epoxy down and paint, and it'll make it like a paint, but it's like a rubber paint. So again, it's just another layer of protection in between the paint and the clear and your work. So the high build, which like I said, it almost seems like poly primer to me. Poly primer does not shrink. Well, let me rephrase that. It doesn't shrink very much, and that's what your slick sands and stuff like that are. This is high build urethane. I almost think it's a hybrid because it really hasn't shrunk like I expected it to. I've got a cup over there from 10/29 of 19. That's this same stuff that I'm getting ready to show you, and it literally has not changed at all after 2 days. And that's more like a poly would be than a high build. The high builds tend to want to shrink really bad. Like that was a high build, and you can see how it literally, it's tiny in that cup. So, however, the polys, in my understanding, are more brittle. So you don't want to put those over plastics and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is use the epoxy primer over the plastics. So here's the difference. So as you can see here, I got a mess, but this just crumbles. Okay. This is your high build / poly, whatever. So that's why you don't want to put that over plastic. And you can put it over plastic as long as it doesn't get hit, because if it gets hit, it's probably going to do that. This is the epoxy. This is probably over a year old, this little piece right here. And you can see how flexible that is. And it's hard, really hard, but yet it's still flexible. So that's what you get with the epoxy versus the high build. Like I said, it's just kind of crumbles, and it doesn't shrink very much. This is, or at least this stuff doesn't. But again, it's pretty brittle. So, kind of an idea between high build, poly / whatever it is. Like I said, I'm not sure that that's actually just pure urethane, because pure urethane seems to shrink more, or at least in my experience over the past, having shot a lot of this stuff. Not a lot, but enough of it to see how it shrinks. And I keep these cups. I've kept multiple cups to see how the shrinking goes. That was Matt's idea from Shut Your Face Garage. And so I pretty much do the same thing just to see the shrinkage rate and stuff like that. So that stuff's going to shrink. This stuff shrinks as well, but it stays flexible to a degree. When it's first shot out of there, the stuff you could wad it up in a ball and it'd pop back. It's so flexible. But as it cures, it gets harder and harder and harder. So like I said, this is over like a year old. However, it still is rubbery. So anyway, that's 2 cents on that. This will be ready to be blocked in the next I don't know, I'm kind of in an area where I'm going to let it kick for a couple weeks, maybe 3. Seeing how that stuff is not shrinking, it's really probably ready to block now. But I'm not going to take a chance. I'm going to go ahead and let it do its thing. That way, it doesn't come back and bite me when it shrinks up into these 180 grit scratches or whatever. 6 months from now, when all the paint's finished curing and doing all its stuff, and then all of a sudden, it's died back, and you look at it and it's like, oh crap, look at these, I missed this and that and whatever. So, in order to keep that from happening, you let this cure out to where it's done shrinking. Then you block it. Then you go up your grits and all that, and then when you're done, you don't have to worry about it shrinking into those bigger scratch, the coarser scratches. At least in my experience. That's my what do they call that? That's my disclaimer. Because there's so many ways to do this, and there's so much information out there, and it's like, I've done this for a while, 8 years or more, or whatever it's been now, but I don't have 30 years under my belt like a lot of these guys do, so I'm still learning just like everyone else, and hopefully the guys that have 30 years on are still learning as well, because this is a very fluid, dynamic thing, and the products that come out are changing. The Bondo isn't the same Bondo as it was back then. Now they've got these primers that cure really fast, or there's all kinds of technology that's changed. But anyway, I'm kind of just cleaning up here. I had a mess, the floor and everything, so I'm kind of trying to get things straightened up. And I've ordered some more gray epoxy primer because I'm out of it. So I'm going to have gray epoxy primer. It's like this stuff here. I know that's not epoxy, but I bought some gray epoxy to cover those. And so, yeah, for those flexible parts, I'll have that flexible. And this stuff builds. Not tremendously, not like this. But it does build, and it's very sandable. It's very, very nice to sand, actually. So I figured that's going to be the best bang for the buck on the flexible parts, is to put a flexible primer on there, block it down 600, whatever, and then shoot paint, clear over that. So the clear that we're getting is like top of the line PPG Concept 2021. I asked the people at the place if there was a better clear out right now, and they said in their opinion it's still in the top 3 or whatever, so we're just going to stick with that. That's what I painted Daryl's interior with, and so that's what we're going to put on this. It's really expensive, but it's really high quality, and also from some of the stuff I read, it has a little bit of flex with it too, so that's good as well. Whereas maybe some of the cheaper clears won't. So if something bumps it, it may give it a little bit more than a cheaper quality. So again, that's just what I read. Don't know that to be a fact. But so there you go. All right, here's one of the buckets that I mixed all this up in, and that's that high build primer. I was going to show you that, like, so. As long as it's sitting in there like that, it's probably going to last forever, or not forever, but it's going to last a long time. But so you put it on, say, one of these plastic parts, and you back into something and bump it. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, you see what's going on? So if it just gets bumped like that, now you've got some problems. So that's why you don't want to put that, unless you don't plan on ever getting bumped, which, you may get lucky. Here's some fairly recent epoxy that I just sprayed that was in one of those little decups things. And this is what I was telling you about, how flexible this stuff is when it's new. It's like a piece of rubber versus once it gets old and hard, it's still flexible, but not near like that. So, and this stuff here, looks like I pretty much have to peel it out in strips. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't crinkle up, and so so there you go. I don't know if that helps anyone, but it kind of gives you an idea of the differences between the epoxies and the high builds, because I think there's some confusion sometimes on primers. I know when I first started, it's like I don't know the difference between epoxy primer and high build primer and poly primer and all the different, you know, stuff, and what's 2K and what's 1K and all that. So it just takes time to figure that out, learn it and stuff like that. So, all right.